Hello everybody, this is a quick message if you like, or video, and it's really to Ambassador Daniel Pruce, the British ambassador to the Republic of the Philippines, who's been in office now for a few years. There was a post on the British Embassy Manila website on March the 1st, or the Facebook page of the British Embassy Manila. And it was clearly a photograph of Ambassador Daniel Pruce and the Vice President of the Philippines, Madam Leni Robredo. And apparently, Daniel Pruce had said there had been discussions over the COVID response of the Philippines, the typhoon response, and of course talks on climate change and environment, etc. So I just have a few questions to the good ambassador. What was the purpose of that meeting, and what was the topic of conversation? Because you see, you need to understand that Madam Vice President Leni Robredo doesn't have any official position within the government. She's not a government minister as such. She doesn't have a particular portfolio like a minister would have in the UK. So she is in fact a minister without portfolio, meaning to say she doesn't have any particular office. She's not currently involved in the Philippine government. She doesn't hold a cabinet position within the Philippine government. The Philippine government have already appointed somebody in charge of the COVID response. There's a COVID czar. There is also a person who has been put in charge of the vaccination program of the Philippines. There is also a Department of Health. There are also the Disasters Committee, or the IATF, who are responsible for the COVID response of the Philippines. You see, they're the ones who have made the policy in conjunction with the president. And I hate to say this, Ambassador Daniel, but Leni Robredo is not part of the IATF, and she's also not part of the official response of the Philippine government when dealing with the COVID-19 response. In fact, dear Ambassador Daniel Pruce, you really need to understand that Leni Robredo is a critic of the government. In the UK, there is a Prime Minister and a Deputy Prime Minister. So what happens is this: when the Prime Minister is incapacitated, maybe he's on a foreign trip or he's not available, what happens is the Deputy Prime Minister then, as you know, then takes over as Prime Minister, and she's left to run the country. However, in the Philippines, Daniel, you need to understand that Leni Robredo is not in any official capacity. So when President Duterte is maybe on holiday or he's out of the country, what basically happens is he then appoints somebody else, either his executive secretary or another cabinet minister or somebody from defense, who would then deputize for him. So this means that Vice President Leni Robredo holds no official position in government. So the question is this: how can she talk about the official response of the government? How can she answer any questions on the COVID-19 response? How can she answer any questions on the vaccine response when really she's a critic of the government? You see, she's from the Liberal Party or the opposition party. So I wonder, as you're the ambassador of the Republic of the British ambassador to the Republic of the Philippines, I wonder why you're not going to the office of the president. I wonder why you're not going to the Presidential Communications Operations Office, or why you're not contacting the various departments. You could contact the IATF. You could contact the Department of Defense. You could contact the Department of Health. You could contact the Office of the President. You could contact the officials in charge of the vaccine program of the Philippines. But instead of doing any of those things, you went to Madam Leni Robredo. And with the greatest respect to her, she can't offer any official government response at all because she's not actively involved in the government. All she's been doing, to be honest, is criticising the government on their efforts and criticising the government on their programs. So I really hope, Ambassador, that you would be able to question the government officially. Maybe you could approach the Office of the President or the President of the Philippines to understand the COVID response and not rely on second-hand information and maybe bias information and somebody who's actually going to be critical of the current government and critical of the president. Thank you very much, sir, for that. And, I hope you don't mind my video or my message, but I'm just a little bit concerned that you're relying on Leni Robredo for your source of information when in fact she doesn't have any government department, and when in fact she's only been critical of the response. She hasn't been positive of the response. She's not giving any official answer. So it's almost like you're kind of going round the back door. You haven't asked for a government response. Maybe you have, Ambassador. I'd like to know whether you've actually gone to the president himself and asked him for the COVID response, or asked him about the COVID response and what it is, rather than asking somebody who's a critic or the opposition of the government. I hate to say this, sir, but I'm just a little bit concerned that maybe somehow you're maybe critical of the government, or maybe you're critical of President Duterte. You also hosted a conference with Madam Maria Ressa when she was talking about fake news and when she was making all these claims against the Philippine government. You had a photograph with Maria Ressa. So I really do wonder what your politics are, or what your intentions are, whether it's to help the British people in the Philippines, whether it's to promote Great Britain in the Philippines, or whether it's just to somehow side with the opposition, or somehow side with Maria Ressa and maybe agree with Maria Ressa. I'm just a little bit confused. You have to understand there's a lot of Brits right now in the Philippines who need help and need support of the embassy. And, that should be the priority of the British government and the priority of the British ambassador to the Philippines, to deal with humanitarian needs, to deal with consular issues, etc. Not to get involved with Philippine politics. If you're going to be addressing the leaders of a nation, surely you should be speaking to the president of the country, or maybe one of his advisors or his communications team, rather than the leader of the opposition. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't understand what the meeting was about. Anyway, thank you.